all had to be scheduled because it all runs at a different time, and sometimes some of them are like throughout the day, some of them are at a particular time where we need to generate this file and send it to downstream. So for that, Vadi had shared this prompt, and we were trying to do this development, like we tried this development like end to end through the Copilot. And this is the prompt where we have the technology stack defined over here, and then we have the non-functional requirements also put over here, and then the problem statement, like implement a job scheduler that handles the triggering of jobs for different country markets and downstream processes. And then we had defined it like step one, step two. So this is the designing part that was done, and based on that we put this prompt to provided this prompt to Gen AI, and it was able to generate a microservice basically, and like a working microservice with all the requirements that we have mentioned in this MD file. So step one was creating the job definition. So what we decided was like we'll have like a job definition table, a main table from which job entries will be created. Like let's say like this particular job definition, right? So what it says is this is the ID, and it says debit posting files to FPS by SCP, and this is the product, this is the market, which is the country, and these are the days where this particular job should run, and the type of the what is the schedule. It is like cyclic, which is like, and then we have the duration unit, minute, hour, days, which you can specify, and then it is like 15 minutes. So every 15 minutes on this particular days this job should run and generate this debit posting file, which can be sent to SCP, right, for processing. And how would it do is like, so basically on this particular schedule it should trigger this processor, which will perform the function of posting the files. And then also additionally we had put if a holiday check is required, yes or no. So similarly, like this is JD1, then this is job description 2 and 3. Based on this job description, what we wanted is create a job entries file, table, where we can sort of schedule all of them, based on the job description. We can have records or entries created in this job entries table. So if you see, this is like the example, right? If you see like JD1 probably, so it is like every 15 minutes it should get created. So this is the sample that we provided, like created like this. And then if you see JD3, right, so which is a different type, which is like a cutoff. So it should basically this debiting, so for Singapore ACH, the debit posting file should happen at particular cutoff times only, like 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 4 a.m., and night 8 a.m., something like that. So that it should create entries similarly 8, 10, 16, and like night 8. And all of this will be in waiting status, because until the time is reached, we'll not be triggering the process, right? So it will all be in waiting status. And then what should happen is like there will be a scheduler which is running, right? So for each of this, and like there is a master scheduler which will be running every minute or so, and it will check like if the time has lapsed. If so, like it will trigger the downstream process. And this is the job entry lifecycle: waiting, running, skip, failed. And what happens also at the same time, when it is when it is time and it is scheduling the job or it is triggering the job, it should put an entry into this particular table as well, trigger jobs table, the job entries like log table, so that we know, okay, this time, this job was picked up at this particular time, and uh, trigger was done basically to the downstream process. So that is one more table. So based on this, what we did is we put this into MD file, and then I had created this skeletal, file, and then new project. And just over here, like nothing much, just over here, like just create a new project, give the name, and just put the group ID and artifact ID. It will automatically populate, and then just define the JDK version and all. So I had created this skeletal uh, base template project over here, and in the resources, added this MD file. So this is the same MD file, it just formatted it here. uh, as a markdown. And then basically then I prompted over here in the Gen AI saying like, generate a plan for the attached MD file. So what I wanted to see is, like what is the plan, or like, what all action would it do in case like, we ask it to implement this entire requirement end to end. So it gave us like, so also like, we can try like, this is something like, I just gave a generate a plan, but what I've seen is for others is like, if you give this additional say like, generate a plan and pseudo code, right, based on the requirement, then it gives you sort of a pseudo code as well, right, like how the table would look and things like that. So we can review that basically, and if we need any changes, then maybe we can do an iterative kind of like, we can go back and update our MD file, markdown file, and then the prompt basically, and add those requirements or details, and then again we can ask it to generate a plan for us, so that once we are like sure like, it is basically trying to do what we are expecting, then what we can do is like, so we can go through this entire thing, and once it is done, then we can say like, start implementation based on the above plan. So if you are satisfied with the plan, and it will also like, put in some further like, notes on like, if further considerations, like if you want to like, lock it like multi-pod blocking strategy, or partition management, or cutoff time storage anywhere, and things like that. So all these are like something that it generates like, or questions which AI asks you to consider. So if you want to like put in this, or if you want this to be part of your requirement, then we can add it to the requirement, the prompt file or MD file. Or if you have satisfied, then you start the implementation. So what it is like, and so I did this actually. Previously I had done like, without adding it to the resources folder, so it was not able to find it even though I attached it. So what it wants, it's like, it's trying to search for this in the project itself. So I put it under resources, and I said start the implementation, and following the scheduler like, the MD file under resources folder. So what it did is it raped this file, and then it started creating, right? So it again like, went through the plan, what it would do, and this was more detailed technical. So this was at a high level, right? And this plan, whatever it is printing over here, it is more of like, it's telling you like exactly file names, what it will do, and what are the exact things that it would do, right? So that it would create 5 migration scripts like for the tables. So it also like considered Flyway for the migration, and it created all the JP entities, like, so that's what it is saying, and what would be the enums or the JP entities, what all it is going to create. It just put a detailed plan, or like, detailed write-up on that, and even writing integration test cases and everything. So now that it, the plan is completed, whatever it needed, so it just started creating all the files basically. And in between, like, it exceeded some time, so it asked for a prompt like continue. So I just clicked on continue and kept like, going on. So finally it was done, and it generated this entire thing, including the, the tables, and all these scripts and everything. And it also like, supported Flyway. It added those dependencies and other things, but since I was not so sure about the Flyway part, the connection and all, I did this manually for now. But we can definitely explore, how we can directly do Flyway. But there is another like, repo that we have, SQL batch executor. So we can use that, or like, or you can try with this same Flyway only code to see what is happening. But I created it manually, but it created all of this. One other thing is like, maybe what we can put in the prompt is like any sort of like, guidelines that we want to provide. Like initially it created like this, like job definitions, but sometimes we might something like custom, right? Like we want all the tables to be prefixed with e-collection DDI and things like that. So those also we can mention, like, prefix, like in our MD file, like prefix the tables with e-collection DDI or things like that, so that it will take care of that as well. So these are few things that I manually modified. I could have changed it and run it again, but since this one minor thing, I just went ahead and did it manually for now. So the table creations it gave, and it was manually. And then also, like, so one thing was like this country holiday. So we already have a table. So for now I have commented it because we have a separate, like, holiday table. So if we put that in the prompt, I think that it will also create accordingly, like, all the JPA entities and everything. But other than that, everything else was, uh, uh, like AI generated. So I did not change any of this. Okay, like, so this is the master scheduler where it starts. I mean, this is the nightly scheduler. So we had put it in the prompt like every night at 11:30. Okay, so this one scheduler must run every night at 11:30 on multiple pods with a row level locking to avoid conflicts, which will, like, populate this job entries table for the next day, basically, right? So that is what it did over here. It did the run nightly job, and along with that, so it will acquire, and then along with that we have prompted it saying, like, delete the previous day partition from after archiving. So first, like, move all the previous day entries to an archive. So that's why it created a archive table as well over here. And what it does is, like, it checks, like, if there is anything that needs to be archived for the previous day, it will archive that, and it will, create all the entries for the next day, keep it ready for the next day. And it also, in the, like, since we have prompted like distribute log, so it did all of that, and also, like, it created all these repositories and the table definitions and all that things, like entities, basically the JP entities. Along with that, like, then the master scheduler, which is like it will run every minute, and it will basically go there and find. So we had put certain conditions as well, like, uh, if it starts in the midway, right? Let's say it starts at around like night to 45, like, 12:45 in the night, midnight, right? 12:40 night, around there. So it should skip all of these other ones, right? So all of that was taken care, right? So process due entries, if you go here, like, it will try to skip all that entries, and so like this, right? Skip before that time, anything whatever is there before the time we started, it will skip it, and it will just pick up the latest. So it will sort in ascending order, and it will pick up the latest, and, like, put it in running condition. After that, so we had prompted it to, like, so like, so for each eligible entry, resolve are configured using the Spring Bean resolution and separate thread and non-blocking. So based on that, it created some task, like, the thread pool task, executor config, and also, yeah, so it basically, like, it is able to resolve it from the application context, the processor beans, which is part of the JD. So it finds out the JD, the job description, and it finds out the job description when you have the processor here, right? So it will find, like, the job description, the processor, and it will trigger it. So it created some sample processor, like, this is the job processor interface, for which it created multiple of these beans, right? So which are configured over there in the table, in the job JD table, right? Job description table, and it was able to pull that and trigger it. So all this have to be implemented further, but for now it is just like a placeholder over here, but all this has to be implemented based on our functionality. So overall, like, and then I executed it, and it was able to, like, create this entries over here. So if you see the job entries, so this is something that we populated manually, or it would have been done by Flyway actually, because it gave you the insert scripts as well. So if you see over here, it gave you like an insert script as well. So that is something that we have to do. I mean, Flyway would have taken care. I did it manually, but other than that, the job entries were populated based on, so if you see here, every 15 minutes, so it identified, like, it needs to create 96 entries or something like that, because it was every 15 minutes. So in a day, like, it would be 96 entries. So it created all 96 entries. Along with that, we had other one also, right, which is like every 90 minutes. So altogether it created, so there were 3 JDs, like job descriptions, and one was 15 minutes, one was 90 minutes, and one was 4 of these, right? So 4 of these, and then 90 minutes, it came to around 20 or 30 entries, and the 96 entry for every 15 minutes. So altogether 116 16 entries were created. And then when I ran this, right, so if you see here, like, we had prompted that was a requirement, like anything before like this particular time. So I ran it around 10 o'clock, 10:45. So everything before 10 o'clock was all skipped basically. So it did not like run for these. So it skipped all of this and it took the latest entry and it just did the completed for those 3 entries only, whichever was around 10:40 or 10:30 to 10:45 around that time. So it did that, and whenever it got triggered, it will like sort of create this saying like it's triggering this particular job number, when it started and when did it finish, and the status will be updated. And if there is anything right now, there won't be anything, but next day onwards, most probably like it will archive everything. And it used this scheduler lock, so that because we had prompted it over here, right, like when doing the nightly job, like use a row level locking to avoid conflicts on multiple pods. So it will be locked by one pod and the other pod won't be able to lock this, so it will not like generate duplicate entries over here. So all in all, this is what it did, and I just had to fix few things, which is this is working like as a, because that was our requirement. This is a Spring Boot application, but I added few bit of like our ESI framework over here to connect to the database, as well as like just change it to ESF application. So that is something that we can try, but it is working with a plain vanilla Spring Boot uh, type of application. If you want to build like end to end, at least like with this problem statement, it was able to do this end to end kind of microservice generation, a code generation. And it also had created test cases. It had here, right? Yeah. So it also had created test cases, but there were some issues we have to fix, but that we can like ask it to fix, and it will automatically fix it, because I commented out some holiday and things like that, right? So it was failing, but it also created like integration test cases as well. So it's like end to end, it took care of things. So that is mostly around this one job scheduler part, Gen AI. So yeah, like that's what it did. But any questions?
Job settlement.